So here you see an example of a risk assessment, and in this case I have given you a list of potential hazards. Now, I used to have quite a few events, and I used to the same risk assessment, or at least the same risk assessment format, because just be aware, every time you organize an event, you need to create a new risk assessment. But I worked on the same format, so the list of hazards, not every hazard was actually applicable for each event. So in this case, for example, you can think of assault by person, so someone that gets into a fight. But under the health hazards, I wrote down an allergic reaction from food, for example. So there's different hazards for each event, and I think you can use this list to get some ideas potentially for your own event. Underneath it, you will see the risk matrix. And this basically is a matrix that identifies whether your hazards or your risk are actually, remote. So most likely it will not happen, to it is most likely, or the worst case scenario, extremely high, that one of your hazards will become a risk and it will actually happen. Now, the higher the risk, the more you need to do to minimize it, and the more you need to do to be prepared for that particular risk. So the risk matrix is an indication of the level of alertness for yourself when it comes to how to deal with this hazard. And how will it then actually look in your risk assessment? Well, in your risk assessment, you have to remember the 5 steps, and the first one is you need to identify the hazard. So for example, in this case, it's the hazard is an assault by person. Who might be exposed to it? Well, it might be staff, it might be public, it might also be the volunteers. How can we control this issue? Well, most likely, or there is a good chance that it actually happens. So there is first aid on site to deal with it, and there is security to monitor the event as well. Now in this case I have said actually the risk of it happening is remote or trivial, because this was a family event, but you never know. Things happen, and it's someone is in a bad mood, and they might just punch someone. So you just put it in there, and then most likely in this case the risk was trivial. Now, if the risk is high, you fill in what further action is necessary as well. So it might be that you need to increase security, or you need to look at your performances that you have on stage, the music, for example, because if the music is quite aggressive, it might have an effect on the mood of your audience. So you can put measures in place. But that's basically what a risk assessment will look like. Now, in this case, I'm only giving you 4 examples, but I have one risk assessment that is about 30 pages long. Ideally, you want to keep your risk assessment easy to read. It should be an overview, basically, because you don't want to flip through pages to find the correct response to how to deal with a risk. So make sure you think it all through, and like I said before, speak to the professionals in the field to help you with your risk assessment.